I'm going to give you the short story of inflation from control to trust. How they create fear. Fear is the real cause of inflation more than anything else. There are a couple other fundamental factors at play, but most of it's fear is creating the erosion of trust. When you have trust, you can get through anything. And there's where inflation, to use interest rates to curb inflation, which is the wrong way to go. So from vision to action, So we got policy one, radical transparency. So we're going to, 4 policies. And this is important for you to understand. 4 policies. And why do I say that? Well, number 1, radical transparency. First of all, understand the issue. You've got to build from the bottom up, not the top down. And for many, many decades and hundreds of years, through conservative ideology, autocratic ideology, dictatorial ideology, has created an issue. And there's, Milton Friedman, an economist, monetarism, is based upon balancing budgets and building the corporation. And I'm going to tell you, the bottom down has gotten you into the mess we're in now. Everything needs to change. Even the liberal government. They have to radically change and let's build the people up, because it's the bottom that supports everything. The average Joe and the above average Joe, which is in the bottom 99%, the bottom 90% are the people that need to be lifted up, not working from the bottom down. So radical transparency, number 1. Citizens viewing interactive dashboards of price budgets, wage data, a classroom where students learn how inflation and spending work. Going to school to actually not learn what to think, but how to think. You've got economists, never worked in the real world, get these degrees. They've been taught what to think. Some of them get in the real world and find out it's not like they've been taught. And most of them keep trying to put these big round pegs into small square holes, and it doesn't fit. And then it's the blame game, pointing the finger. A classroom where students learn how inflation and spending work. Town halls where policymakers explain numbers in plain terms so that people understand, and people can ask the right questions to better understand and work together. Together again. Can you imagine that? Working together. So the first pillar is radical transparency. Policy 1, open budgets. Real-time data on prices, rents, and wages. So rentals, healthcare, groceries, energy. You need price controls. You need to balance things out. And this thing about deficits, government deficits, you're looking at it totally wrong. It's not like a home budget. Everybody's trying to make it into like you can't do that at home. No, because your home budget is different because you're dealing with income and debt, whereas government is dealing with asset creation. So they create revenue, they create cash, they invest it in the people. So you got dual balance. You got a credit section, you got a debit section. And then people say, oh, the debt, the debt, the debt. Well, the Treasury, the government Treasury can buy all those bonds and there'll be no debt. And then you're going to have a situation where the banks say, what? We need bonds. What are you doing to us? So that's the reality. That's how things really work. And you don't get it. You've got to look at the government putting money into the economy, into the people, and lifting people up, because a lot of that is spent on everyday items that help create and stimulate GDP on a micro and a macroeconomic level. So policy 2, affordable foundations, construction of public housing, renewable energy, local farms. You know, food, as I explained, food, energy, housing, healthcare need to be stabilized in price, because we've had a situation where we have not asset creation, but asset inflation. That's gone on far too long. And that's where you got to turn that pyramid the upside down. The point down with all the people, lifting everybody up. Now, affordability means long-term public investment, building homes, securing supply chains, and capping monopolistic pricing power. This is very important, capping monopolistic pricing power. You have that in healthcare. See, Conservative government, Ontario, the feds under Pierre Poilievre, they want to privatize a lot of things. They're doing it in Alberta also. You want asset inflation? That's the way you go. You want asset creation? You do it differently. Not short-term fixes, but shift the burden to families. The average guy and the above average guy in the bottom 90 percentile, 99 percentile, has been doing the heavy lifting for far too long. And it really is not good for anybody. You don't need the pain and suffering. You can create very much benevolence, harmony, and abundance. Life's about balance. So forget about the short-term fixes, those little promises just to get into power quickly, stay in power quickly, that really do not serve the real people. We got to change the way we look at things. And it starts with the people. So how about wages that track reality? You know, nurses, teachers, tradespeople, small business owners, where you see productivity and wages, and finally rising together. And it can be done very, very quickly. Doesn't take long. Now, wages that track reality. For decades, productivity rose, but paychecks didn't keep up. And this is proven over every charting of history has proven that. A policy of trust means aligning wage growth with the real cost of living through fair labor standards, strengthened unions, and small business support. Get rid of the organized crime element. It's got to go. When people earn enough to live securely, they believe in the system again, and trust. That's how you get trust. That's how people work together and develop camaraderie and a sense of dignity. It starts with kindness from within yourself. Now also public wealth. Now I say public wealth, not public debt. Government investments turning profit through renewable energy. Renewable energy is very important. Nobody's ever talking about, well, How about magnets in parallel to create free energy? You know, the focus is on the wrong things. We don't live in the 1800s. Donald Trump wants us back in the roaring 20s and the 1800s. You see that? Travel north, mega south to mega north. Pierre Poilievre, just the microcosmic puppet of Donald Trump right now, and that whole party, just banking on getting into power. They've got no cure for what ails you, but they want to be in power. It's all that motivates them. So public wealth, investment that generates shared value. Instead of viewing spending as debt, governments can treat it as public equity. Double entry accounting. You know, accountants do it, been doing it for decades. But most of them are into these Keynesian and monetarism economic theories. And this just does not work, does not serve the people. People just got to work from bottom up. Investing in education, innovation, clean energy that returns value for generations. Public wealth builds fiscal trust. The belief that our collective resources are being grown and not wasted really is very, very important. So we got a bonus, Policy 5. Damn. Policy 5. Yeah, crowdsourced policy platforms, local citizen assemblies, participatory budgeting sessions, diverse citizens using digital tools to propose or vote on priorities. Not the rigged system like Trump's doing. Trump was a wannabe gangster. Now he's a wannabe autocrat. I was married to a British blue blood, to the youngest daughter, the same one that took that wannabe gangster and got him into the Russian system. So the Russian hoax is no hoax. Trust me on that. So, shared decision making. People trust what they can shape. Citizen assemblies and participatory budgets give everyone a stake, not just economists or elites, but teachers, parents, and workers. Democracy deepens when the economy listens back. It's a two-way street. New social contract. Families thriving in affordable homes. Small businesses expanding. Governments reporting success and failure openly. A mosaic of ordinary people looking directly at us all and living a good life that you're meant to live. A life of happiness, compassion, benevolence, harmony, and abundance. And that should be the new social contract. Building the people up. Not from the top down. Top down never worked. Created the problem we're in right now. It's simple as that. No other way of looking at it. You got Trump's big, beautiful budget. What did he do? Cut Medicare, Doge, hacked the systems, been using that for all his benefit, put people out of work, cutting Medicare to, 20 to 40 million Americans that really need it, and gives $4.5 trillion in tax benefits to the top 1% and 10%. Like, didn't work in 1985 under Reagan and Thatcherism. That's where it started going downhill real fast. Pierre Poilievre, when he was working with Stephen Harper back in 2008 to 2015, running housing, what did he do? Sold 880 units to private enterprises, corporations. You know, nobody's telling you the truth. Nobody's telling you the truth. And ain't that the truth? So I'm going to show you what these people here are doing.
Okay, I know. Interest rates, monetary policy, sounds like the start of a nap, but hear me out. This is the institution who decides how much your mortgage costs. This is the voice you'll hear before the economy turns. This is the one institution that's literally designed to be apolitical, and all they care about is data, data, data. The other day, the Bank of Canada held a press conference where they admitted that Canada's economy is in structural trouble. So let's break it down because it's more serious than it sounds. Now, I've watched the entire press conference, so you don't have to, but when it comes to this kind of communication, I strongly recommend.
You can call that structural trouble, or you can look at it as opportunity to finally pivot in a direction that makes this country self-sustaining, for all others to look up to, takes care of its people, and shows how it's done the way it needs to be done by lifting from the bottom up. And this is the new future. This is the way you got to go. You're going to go that way anyways, because if you want to have pain and suffering, you go the way you're going under Pierre Poilievre, Donald Trump, and those ilk. You got to change the way you think, the way you do things. You want compassion, you want benevolence, harmony, and abundance. None of this pain and suffering. No. The biggest club is not the way to live. It's never been the way to live, and it should never have been the way to live.
That you view the whole thing, because economics under the gentlest circumstances is complicated, let alone with all the turbulence that Canada has been experiencing lately. Let's get into all of this. Just before we do, if I could quickly ask you to like this video and subscribe if you enjoy the content, as it'll help this video be seen by more people so they get the nuanced message. So the core of the message is essentially that Bank of Canada just cut rates for the second time in a row, but they're also signaling something deeper, that this is not just a slowdown, but rather a structural shift, and monetary policy is reaching its limits. We'll discuss what that means. Let's first have a listen to what the governor is going to say.
Today, the bank lowered the policy interest rate a further 25 basis points, bringing it to 2.25%. This was our second straight cut and reflects ongoing weakness in the economy and contained inflationary pressures. Today, we also published our outlook for the Canadian economy. Putting those two things together, we have four main messages. First, U.S. tariffs and trade uncertainty have weakened the Canadian economy. We expect very modest growth through the rest of the year, with some pickup in 2020.
Here's the other deal. U.S. tariffs have weakened the American economy worse than the Canadian economy, and it's had a global effect where tariffs are on everybody because U.S. is pay to play. It's gangsterism. You got the American oligarchs now, just like the Russian oligarch system. And this is what you need to understand. Quit turning a blind eye to it and listening to lies.
Second, while this weakness is restraining price increases, the trade conflict is also adding costs for many businesses, putting upward pressure on inflation. We expect these opposing forces to roughly offset, keeping inflation close to the 2% target. And third, to support the economy through this period of adjustment, we have lowered our policy rate by 50 basis points over the last two meetings and by 100 basis points since the start of the year. Finally, the weakness we're seeing in the Canadian economy is more than a cyclical downturn. It's also a structural adjustment. The U.S. trade conflict has diminished Canada's economic prospects. The structural damage caused by tariffs is reducing the productive capacity of the economy, and it's adding costs. This limits the ability of monetary policy to boost demand while maintaining low inflation.
And that's not true. That's not true at all. This is where you have to invest in reshaping how this country operates. You can keep chasing the pearl that's floating down that river the other way to a bygone era, or you can remake a new framework that serves all the people all the time. And that's where we need to go.
Now, first of all, when they say 50 basis points, they mean 0.5%. Canada's policy interest rate is now at 2.25%, which, if you're not following this closely, might not sound like much. But as the governor just said, this is the second cut in a row, and it marks a pretty clear shift in tone. The Bank of Canada is no longer in hold steady mode, it's in support mode. And the reason for that is fairly straightforward. The economy is weakening, and inflation is no longer a fire that needs putting out. Now, people usually ask, what's the right interest rate? But there is no magic number, unfortunately. There is no ideal rate that works across all situations.
Yeah, but interest rates, you've been trying this for many, many decades. The interest rate lever is not the one that works either. A lot of different things. You know, back in the Roman era, the coins, and then the people started taking some of the metals out of the coins, devaluing them, creating inflation. China dynasties, same thing. Got to get rid of the corruption, number one. That's very important. We got to change the way we do things. So you put money into the economy, you get people into new industry, because we've got new industry that can be restructured starting immediately. And that will help with the GDP. Also, just a very simple thing, I'm going to give you an example. Old age security. For the bottom level, the minimum cap, which is $22,272, I believe, hike that up by $4,000. And then the top end cap, that's $178,000 and change, reduce it by $4,000, because that $4,000 to the bottom sector is going to 90 to 100% of that's going to go back into the economy, into GDP and growth to help offset the spending. And this is the way you got to look at things, because you're not looking at things properly. Let's go to the other gentleman here. This guy's from Beavis Wealth. Fine people. But understand, people are going on belief systems that have been created for them, that they've been taught that way of thinking, which obviously over many decades has not worked, but can't let go of the ego because you've invested so much time into where you got to here. But understand, here is where you change for the better, and you do it in the present, right now. Here's more. Watch the fear mongering. This is not building trust. A lot of the inflation problem over time, from the history of the Roman era, is trust.
Brand new monetary policy report. In plain language, the bank is telling us that the Canadian economy has been permanently damaged. Not slowed, not cooling, but damaged. Bluntly, the report says the trade conflict with the U.S. has pushed our economy onto a lower long-term path. Growth has stalled, investment has dried up, the job...
Yeah, tariff situation. You're not going to deal with a gangster because you're not going to win. He's a zero-sum guy where he's got to win and you got to suffer. That's not a game. You don't want to participate in that game. Why would you?
The market is cracking under pressure. Exports have fallen. Unemployment is climbing. And I think the worst thing, the most worrying thing about this is the bank admits that there is nothing that monetary policy can even do to reverse it. So today, I'm going to unpack just how severe this report really is.
See, that's absolute bullshit from my point of view. I'm going to tell you the way I see it. You can write in the comments section. We can discuss this because it's absolute bullshit. You buy into this because you don't spend the time, your emotions are triggered, and so you think, oh, this guy's promising all this, I'm going to put my trust in him. And what happened to the American people with Donald Trump? Friggin' blasting boats and Venice in the Caribbean. Meanwhile, Trump back in the late 90s, early 2000s, up to about 2016, laundering money for the Colombian cartel. This guy David Guzman, put into jail in Miami by Preet Bharara under Obama's tenure. This Trump, laundering money to finance black market guns, and this is how the gun situation in America has gotten so bad and around the world with autocratic regimes, despotic regimes that are only out for themselves. And that's where we're at. So I'm not going to go much further into this. I think I've explained enough. You just got to make a choice. Do you want pain and suffering, or compassionate, benevolent, harmonious, and abundant life? It's as simple as that. Pain and suffering, which is what they call the hell on earth, or you can have heaven on earth. You're the creator. You put them in power. You put the faith in them. They keep taking. They build. They don't build from the bottom up. They build from the top, and it doesn't trickle down. And that's where we're at. So thanks for watching. Questions, comments, throw in chat. Love and peace to everyone. Take care. Ciao for now. Be good. Stay safe. Canada, the U.S., two countries, totally different politics. But we share a border, a media space, and a lot of the same problems. I'm Michael J, and this is Borderline Politics, where we cut through the cliches and compare real policy, culture, and power on both sides of the 49th parallel. From free speech to healthcare, housing to populism. If it matters politically, we're breaking it down. Subscribe for smart cross-border political insight. Two countries, one conversation.